Hello, my name is Bianca Morrow, and I've been on the Lowell Cultural Council since 2017. I would like to welcome you back to the second webinar in our Inclusion 101 series entitled Inclusive Digital Space for the Well-Meaning, Well-Doing, and the Well-Clueless. The topic for today's presentation is Accessible Social Media and Inclusive Instagram. Here with me are Maxine Farkas, the chair of the Lowell Cultural Council, without which this series would not be possible, and our presenter and author of this series, Carrie Thompson. Carrie has been a champion for the inclusion of people with disabilities in the arts and culture sector. As the executive director for Silent Rhythms, she has taught more than 5,000 people with disabilities how to dance, and has taught countless more people without disabilities on how to include those people with disabilities in the arts and in our community through events such as Lowell and Boston's Salsa in the Park. She's joining us today to share her knowledge and expertise on how to make our community even more inclusive, especially during the pandemic. Thank you so much for joining us again, Carrie, and the stage is all yours.
Thank you so much, Bianca. Thank you to the Lowell Cultural Council and Maxine for this opportunity to be here with you all. And the intent of the series for the next 4 weeks is about to educate on the why and how of including people with disabilities. And today's session is really focusing on the how of accessible and inclusive social media. So the next slide, please. So this is, again, Bianca already mentioned that I'm the executive director for Silent Rhythm, and my role at Disability Rights Fund is as the Senior Officer of Communication, Inclusion, and Analytics. The Disability Rights Fund is an international grant maker. We're based in the United States, specifically in Boston, but our work is overseas in the global South. And so in both roles, I'm responsible for managing social media and the various websites. And I have to think about several different things. Who is my audience? What does my organization want to say? Is this information accessible to people with disabilities? Specifically, all people with disabilities, including disability types such as those with intellectual disabilities, those who are deaf, those who have visual impairment, those who are deafblind. Another question I have to ask myself, is this accessible to people with disabilities outside of the United States? And that's a more challenging question because in the United States, we tend to rely so much on technology, but outside the United States, or even within the United States, not everyone has access to internet and computers. But one question I never asked, can my organization afford the accessibility cost? The reason I never asked that because how can we afford not to? But budget is a concern, of course, for all organizations. For the Disability Rights Fund, their budget is in the millions, while Silent Rhythm, the budget is in the thousands. And yet, a lot of the same achievement and accessibility are the same. So regardless of budget, accessibility is always a possibility. It's always something that can be achieved, no matter how much your operational budget is. And especially for social media, that social media tends to be free for all. And most of them have accessibility features built in. And it's just a matter of knowing how to do it. So next slide, please. So this is going to be an overview of what I'm going to talk about today. Again, the topic is focusing on accessible and inclusive social media. I'm going to talk about why access to social media matters, understanding the role we play in achieving this, the tools, website accessibility 101, then breaking down alt text, and then the steps to accessible tweet, post, and IG, Instagram. I'm not sure what the verb is for Instagram. We tweet, we post, but in Instagram, what do we do? I don't know. That may be a more simple question, but I'm focusing on the more difficult question. How do I make Instagram accessible? So I want to point out that we will offer people the opportunity to ask questions. So you can ask a question and put it in the chat or put it in the Q&A. And I'll try to stop with about maybe 5 minutes and then give Bianca a chance to read some of the questions, and then I will do my best to respond. I want to make a notation about accessibility that we have closed caption, and you just have to click the closed caption icon at the bottom, and when you click it once, it will come on. If you click it again, it will turn off. And then I'm also following the caption but on a separate window. So if you are not aware that I am a person with a disability myself, I am deaf, blind, and deaf blind can mean a wide variety of things, but for me, it means that I am deaf, but in low vision, and low vision means that I can see just a very small amount. So pretty much like if you look through the world through this small hole, this is how I see the world. Instead of seeing everything at a 180 degrees, I'm seeing maybe 10 degrees. And so for me to follow what people are saying and what I'm saying, I'm showing you my iPad and the caption on a separate link here so that I can follow along on that. And I accidentally hit a button that took the caption off. So let me fix that real quick. There. Touch is something that's so important to me, but even I can touch things the wrong way. So for the future webinars next week and the following week, so as I said today, we're going to be focusing on creating accessible and inclusion social media. Next week is going to be the really difficult question that everybody is asking now. How do we create accessible virtual space? Whether that's on Zoom, whether that's through Microsoft Teams meetings or Google Hangout, accessibility still matters. And I'm going to explain the wide variety of options and what to consider and how to make it more accessible and inclusive in digital space. And so the last week is going to be on another very challenging question for people about how do I add caption, closed caption, not just for a meeting like this or a webinar like this, but for my video, for how does Facebook Live work with captioning, how does YouTube work with captioning. So that will be our last session. So now let's begin our hashtag inclusion series. Hide emojis. So next slide. So this slide is about trying to define social media and why it matters. Why does it matter for society? Why it matters for people with disability and the role that you play. So why does it matter to society? The question is, why should accessible and inclusive social media matter to society? But for the same reason that social media in general matter to society is a way to engage, to connect, to share our thoughts. It's a vehicle for free speech and highlighting injustice, to share critical information and to provide us with entertainment and amusement. Who does not love videos with dogs going down water slides? I do. So, but why does accessible social media matter for your organization and for you as a person without a disability, as well as for people with disability? So, for one thing, it matters to people with disabilities because we are part of society. So in doing social media, you want to make sure that you are also being inclusive of people with disability because we make up society. The second reason why this should matter to your organization is the law. People are often not sure what the law, which is the American with Disabilities Act, covers. It covers public space. Digital space is public space. This was reinterpreted by the Department of Justice not long ago. And this is also something, access to information. Last week I talked about access to the arts being a disability rights issue, a human rights issue, and a civil rights issue. The access to information, including social media, is also a disability rights issue, a human rights issue, and a civil rights issue. It's covered under an international convention called the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability. Access to information is also included in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. All of these say that access to information matters. When we do not have access to information, this leads to oppression and isolation. So in the previous webinars, I discussed that the fundamentals of Inclusion 101 have 3 points. The first point is that inclusion and accessibility are 2 different things. The second is about using a participatory approach. And then the third is intersectionality. So why do these 3 points matter in accessible social media? And this is also going to be about how your role plays into this. So there are 2 types of social media. There is inclusive social media and there is accessible social media. So accessible social media will mean that you work to include alt text or image description. But perhaps you're only doing this because you have to under your organization. But maybe from 9 to 5, you're on point with trying to have accessible information on social media, but then after work, you post on social media on a personal level, but you don't do the same effort of trying to provide accessible information. So you don't share an image description of pictures you post of your family. You're not sharing alt text of what you made for dinner. So that's why I'm talking about 2 different things. So the first, when you do it for your organization, you're being accessible. But when you're doing it on a personal level, on your personal social media, you are truly being inclusive. And when you're doing that, you have a role of sharing the message of inclusion to all people. People who don't have disabilities might look at your personal post and say, wow, why are you using image description? And it's an opportunity to have a conversation about why do you do that and how that you want it matters that people with visual impairment are still able to follow your personal social media account and understand what's going on in your life, because we care about our society and we care about the community. So we don't want to just know on the professional level. We want to know on a personal level what is going on in our community, what is going on with our friends. So again, your role, if you play in doing inclusive social media, this means that you're doing it for work and you're doing it for life. So next slide, please. So this is a slide I used in last week's webinar, and it brings out all the different tools for creating accessibility. And I just wanted to run through them. So we have sign language interpreters, easy read, plain language, screen readers, Braille, large print, Braille display, caption or CART. CART stands for captioning in real time. Then there are many accessibility features built into your smartphone and your laptop, especially if it's a Mac device. And then there are tons of apps that are free and that provide a tremendous amount of accessibility features. And so on this list, the one that's really important to look at and think about is screen readers. So we are going to be talking about social media for people with visual impairment. So next slide, please. So this is another slide that I had from last week's webinar on making websites accessible. And I didn't have a chance to dive too deeply into website accessibility, but this conversation will dovetail into social media. So I want to mention that first, our website content accessibility guideline is sort of like the equivalent of the American with Disabilities Act for the website. It's a guideline for how to make your website accessible. And I include a web link for learning more about what those guidelines are. And then I have an example on the right side of a picture showing you accessibility toolbar that has the option for color inversion, for making font sizes larger. And then there's also a little toolbar part for select language. So this is plugged in with Google Translate. But what is the point of the toolbar? But before I talk about that, first I want to say that be careful if you try to Google how to make your website accessible. There are a lot of ads that will pop up, a lot of companies that will say that they are website accessibility experts. A lot of times those are not. And what they do is just simply put in a plugin for the accessibility toolbar. That does not make your website accessible. A web developer has to put in all of the accessibility features and design the website to make it accessible according to the website content accessibility guideline. Most web developers know how to do this. So if you are working with a web developer to create a new website or to reformat your existing website, ask them challenging questions about accessibility for your website. Make it part of your contract, part of their scope of work. And if they're not certain about how to do that, find a new web developer. Now, the toolbar that I mentioned, I do like the toolbar. It should be step 2. Step 1 is absolutely making sure that your web developer has the entire platform accessible. The accessibility toolbar is a way to help make accessibility visible for people with disabilities. Not everyone knows how to go through all the steps to create a larger website page. So what I need to do for myself to be able to read a website is, as a person with low vision, what I need to do is make 2 things happen. One, I need to make the website a color inversion format. And for me, the step to do that means that I have to go to, I'm using a Mac laptop. I click the Apple logo. The second step is I click System Preferences. The third step is click Display. The fifth step, click the box for invert colors. So those are a lot of steps. But if you have a toolbar at the top, I could just click that part right there that will tell me that there's color inversion and contrast. Another thing that I need to do is I need to make the font size larger. And the keyboard shortcut in Mac to do that is to hold the Command key down at the same time as the plus symbol. And so holding it down and clicking it multiple times will make it bigger and bigger and bigger. And then conversely, if you do it with the minus symbol, Command and the minus symbol, it'll get smaller and smaller. Now again, this is something that I know because I tried to study what the steps are. But other people with low vision or visual impairment might not know how to do that. So the toolbar is a way to help those people who don't know the actual steps. So color inversion and zooming in are both tools I use on my smartphone. All of you have these accessibility tools at your fingertip if you use a smartphone and if you use a laptop. So I highly recommend that you explore the accessibility features on your laptop, whether it's a PC or a Mac, and your smartphone, whether it's an iPhone or an Android phone. The other part of website accessibility is not necessarily a disability accommodation, but a language accommodation. So having a Google Translate built in is a great tool for people who do not speak English as a first language. If you are working with organizations that focus on immigrants, refugees, or other people who have challenges understanding English as their first language. So you want to give them a platform that makes your information accessible to them. So now I'm going to talk about how to make pictures on your website accessible. So the next slide. Okay. So this is a screenshot from a WordPress editor dashboard, and I uploaded a photo. And off to the side on the right, there are three options. One is to add alt text. The second is to add caption. And the third is to add description. So what is alt text? And then what is caption and what is description? What do these three things differ? The number one most important thing to fill out on your website is the alt text. Description is more optional. Caption is really more about a visual information for all people. So next slide, please. Okay, so here is a picture that I have from one of my articles. And this is a picture that is a group of my staff and members of our global advisory panel standing together in a circle. And at the bottom, there is a caption, and the caption says that DRF staff and DRF Global Advisor come together at the Global Advisory Panel meeting. So this caption is not accessible by screen reader. So that's why I'm saying that captions are not truly important for accessibility, but it's nice for the public to know what is happening in the image because they may see the image and still not know what's happening. Alt text and the caption and description could all be the exact same language, but the alt text is the one important thing to do. You might also see at the top right of the picture is the little I. That I said that alt text was included. And when you click the I, the alt text will actually pop up if you want to read it yourself. Okay, so alt text has a universal benefit. Not only is it for the benefit of people with visual impairment, it benefits your organization with search engine options, SEO. When you have the specific keywords in your alt text, it will pop up in the search engine. So what was a unique term to Disability Advice Fund is Global Advisory Panel. That's really unique to Disability Advice Fund. And having that in alt text means that when people are searching the internet for Global Advisory Panel, it automatically brings them to one of these pictures. So I want to make sure and emphasize that this is another reason why alt text should matter to your organization It's not only the benefit for making it accessible for people with disability, but getting more of your information out there in the general internet sphere. So here are 5 tips for writing a good alt text. 1, describe the image as specifically as possible. Wow, the second tip is keep it short. The most popular screen readers cut off alt text at around 125 characters for the website and for screen readers. But a lot of alt text platforms and social media, such as Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram, they have their own limit. So it's usually 100 characters. So it's ideal to try to keep your alt text within 100 characters. The third tip is use your keywords. So the alt text, as I mentioned before, is a great way to help get more of words unique to your organization in the internet sphere. The fourth tip, you don't need to include image of, picture of, because the screen reader automatically knows that this is an image that is hovering over. And then one more tip on website is that if you have a little button that's like saying submit or read more or apply here, you need to include the alt text in that button because the screen reader will be able to read the button. You just want to make sure that they know why they are clicking this button and where it will go. Slide 9, please, the next one. Creating accessible social media. Why we're here today. Thank you for your patience and letting me get the explanation about our website accessibility out of the way. I wanted to emphasize that before getting into accessible social media because alt text and description will come up in both places, websites and social media. We are going to be talking about 3 different social media platforms: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. There are many different social media platforms that have accessibility features, including YouTube, Vimeo. There's just so many social media platforms, it's really hard to keep up with everything, but these 3 are the current main ones that people are using. The next slide, please. Okay. So on this slide, we are shown a picture of me with Governor Baker. And now I'm going to give you tips on writing image description. So I already gave you information about writing alt text. And you can use a lot of the same language for alt text and writing an image description. The 2 do have different purposes. So I wanted to explain more about what you are when you are looking at a picture, what you need to say about the picture. So yes, a picture is worth 1,000 words. We only have 100 characters to do that in. So what do we need to know about what's happening in the picture? 1, we want to know, where is this photo being taken? 2, who is in the photo? 3, what are they doing? Next slide, please. So here is an image description of what was happening in that picture. Carrie, a white woman with long brown hair, wearing a blue dress and holding a white cane, stands next to Governor Baker, who is wearing a suit. They stand next to the grand staircase in the Massachusetts State House. So this is actually 172 characters, and it's okay if we're doing it as an image description, and the image description will be included as text in the post. It's not part of the alt text. This will make a little bit more sense as we move along. So the other thing is to understand is that everyone sees something different. So next slide, please. I want you to look at this picture for a few minutes. What do you see? I want you to think about this picture. I want you to think about how you would read this picture to someone who is not able to see this picture. If you are visually impaired, please be patient because we're going to come back to this image later on in this webinar, and I will describe what I see in this picture. So hopefully you've had time to look at this picture and think about this. Next slide. So now here I'm going to dovetail in talking about social media best practice. The first one is when you include a hyperlink, indicate where it leads to. Is it an audio or a video? And then is why this is so important is because you want to make sure that the person who is visually impaired, when they are reading this post, and if they click your link by accident or don't know what they're clicking to, you want to prepare them that it's an audio or a video, because those will be something that if they were out in public, they may not want the people around them to hear, especially if it's not suitable for viewing at work, or when the audio is something that might be a little embarrassing, like maybe it's a clip of your friend's kids singing happy birthday, and that would be cute, but maybe also embarrassing if you were on the MBTA subway and other people around you heard happy birthday. So, second tip, use a URL shortener to minimize the number of characters in a hyperlink. I often do not include a hyperlink when I'm sharing a website. I will include a URL shortener if it means I'm trying to tell you that if you need to download an application, I want a short version of the hyperlink. But for the most part, when I go to Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn and I copy and paste the hyperlink into the post, once the preview shows up and the social media platform has captured that particular website, I go back and delete the entire website link. So people won't, as long as you describe in the post what is happening. The third tip is save hashtags for the end of a post. The fourth tip is to capitalize the first letter of each word in a hashtag, which is called camel backing, and it's really cool. And if you know the sign for camel, and I'm doing it in my video, which is the letter C going up and down and sort of mountain to indicate the humps of a camel. So camel backing means that the first letter of each word is capitalized. So instead of having hashtag Lowell Cultural Council all being in small cases, you wanted to have hashtag capitalized L, capitalized C, and capitalized C for the second C. This helps us understand better what the entire hashtag is. And this is also for those who are low vision, as well as those using a screen reader. The screen reader will tell you capital letters. So please move to the next slide. So on this slide, we continue to talk about best practice. So tagging, when you tag people in your photo, this is actually a good thing because when you tag people in the photo, screen readers are able to read the name of people you're tagging in your photo. So I do recommend that practice. The sixth tip is do not use the color background option, which is for Facebook. So Facebook has this option that you could type up something in the post and then add the color background to it. When you do that, it automatically defaults your post from a post into a picture. And the picture is something that the screen reader cannot read the text within the picture. 7, avoid using acronyms. 8, use image and video description. I'll talk more about what image and video description are. 9, use alt text. I added a 10th option that's not on the PowerPoint, and the PowerPoint is that, on the 10th tip is save the emojis until the end. Yes, emojis do have alt text, and here is an example of a text one blind woman received. Here we go. Wishing you a prosperous new year, excited face with money symbols for eyes, stuck out tongue, excited face with money symbol for eyes, and stuck out tongue, excited face with money symbol for eyes, and stuck out tongue, excited face with money symbol for eyes, and stuck out tongue. You guys free tonight? Give me a call. So when you put all those emojis in the beginning or throughout the middle part, there's an awful lot of nonsense that comes up on a screen reader. And this person with the visual impairment says she never bothered to read the part, she never got to the part where it said, give me a call. She was done and she moved on from finishing up reading that text. So it's amazing how so much was said and so little of it had a point. So do people with visual impairment like emoji? Sure. Say them for the end. Happy face, happy face, happy face. Next slide, please. So now we are diving into the steps to take for going into your Twitter account to make your tweets accessible. So of the various social media platforms, Twitter is the only one where you go to their website and you click the menu option or setting, and it has a sub-menu for accessibility. Most of the platforms and social media do tend to have accessibility features built in, but they don't talk about it, what they offer. So it's really challenging to know how to make those particular social media platforms accessible if they don't tell you how to. So for Twitter, now Twitter does not offer alt text. It offers alt text. It does not offer auto-generated alt text. So the way to enable an alt text on Twitter, and if you have your phone close by, I recommend going to Twitter or go to your website, twitter.com. And so what you do is you go to navigate down to where it says more, then click settings, then click accessibility, and then turn on the composed image description. So the alt text feature in Twitter will not work until you complete this step. So the next slide is the dashboard for Twitter. So you can see that I had included all of the steps to get into the part where it says compose. So in the first column, it says more. The second column says setting. After setting, I clicked accessibility, which brought me over to the option for composing an image description, so which I have checked off. So once you do that, you're good to go to making your tweets accessible when you have a photo. So next slide, please. This is a screenshot showing what happens when after you want to create a tweet and you want to add your photo. You add the photo, and then you select the option to edit photo or to add description. So in this part, you can see the picture of me with Governor Baker, and then at the bottom, it has the option for description. I want to emphasize that when you're writing the description, this description is not what everyone will see. The description is only going to be what people with a screen reader will be able to read. So you don't have to worry about typing in description and having everyone else read this. Okay. So next slide, please. So now we're going over to Facebook, Instagram, and auto-generated alt text. Now, what are some of the things we need to think about? Unlike Twitter, Facebook and Instagram have auto-generated alt text. Unlike Twitter, you do not have to enable this alt text feature. It's automatic, it will just come up. But auto-generated alt text is not necessarily a good thing. This is why it's important to human generate alt text. So you've seen the picture of me and Governor Baker a number of times. This is me bragging just a little bit, saying that I've met Governor Baker. But what does the auto-generated text say of this picture with me and Governor Baker? Man, comma, woman. I don't want you to know that this picture is of a man and a woman. I want you to know that this is the picture of me with Governor Baker. Thank you very much. Next slide. Actually, go back one slide, please. Yes, I read everything. So move on to the next slide. Thank you. Sorry about that. So here I'm going to tell you how you add the alt text in Facebook. So this is my personal Facebook page, and you can see the little picture of me at the top. So I'm about to write a post, but before I write the post, I added this photo. So it's the same thing as adding the photo for anyone. When you go over to the photo and you hover your mouse arrow over it, you're gonna have these two options on the picture pop up. So on one side of the photo shows the little bubble of people. So if you wanna tag people to this photo, and which I will tag myself and Governor Baker. The other one on the right side is a little pencil to edit. Click the little pencil. Next slide, please. When you click that pencil, then you will be brought to this option, and then to the side, you can see where it says to add alt text. And then you just go ahead and type in the alt text. And remember, try to keep it under 100 characters. Next slide. So, do all people with visual impairment use alt text? No. Well, that's why I've been trying to talk about the difference between alt text and image description. So here on this slide are two different screenshots. On the left side is a tweet. The tweet includes a general post, and then it has a picture. The description is added in the alt text. We don't see the description. It's just the alt text that's in the picture. However, for somebody who is low vision like myself, we may not necessarily be using a screen reader. We may be relying on other information, but it's important to us to know what's happening in the picture. So on the other side is a picture from Facebook and Instagram. It's the same picture on the left side showing you the New York skyline. And this one, the post says, "Good morning, NYC. Time to rise and grind." And then here is the image description. The image description says, "The morning sun peers through the New York City skyline." That helps me. So if I'm looking at this picture and it's not clear to me what I'm looking at, it might be blurry, it might be like pieces and pieces. I can't really bring them all together. I can use my font magnification to read your post, and your post is including the image description. And it should also include the alt text in a separate part. So, but image description is really important to consider as well for those with visual impairment. And it's actually okay if you don't use the alt text as long as you're including image description. So the image description is a way to reach both those who are using the screen reader and those who are using other ways to help them with below vision. Next slide, please. So now we're back to that picture. What do you see? Keep looking at this picture. Now let me tell you, what do I see? Young protesters gather. Some are holding signs. At the center is a young Black woman holding her fist high up. Now, do you agree with the description? So, description and alt text is also subjective to each individual person's perspective. Everyone has a story, a perspective. It's important that society remembers that people with disabilities have a story, that we have a perspective, and we also want to know your story, your perspective. So thank you. I hope that this presentation on social media was helpful. I also hope that you can join us next week for the next webinar, which will be on creating accessible virtual spaces, virtual meeting spaces, or virtual online classes. And next slide, please. So if you have questions, this is my email address, and here are some of the social media platforms that I use. And am I consistent with using Twitter and Instagram? Not always. I only joined Instagram recently because the millennials kept coming to my classes on salsa and dance and kept asking me if I was on Instagram. So that's why I had to go on Instagram to satisfy the millennials. So thank you. I'm going to turn this back over to Bianca to read any questions.
Hi, Carrie. Thank you so much. Right now, we don't have any questions in the Q&A, so I'm going to give people a few minutes to think about whether or not they want to ask a question. And during that time, I'm going to thank everyone who helped make this possible. Again, my name is Bianca Morrow. I'm on the LCC. Our primary presenter today and author of this series was Carrie Thompson, Executive Director of Silent Rhythms and Inclusion Activist. We had Maxine Farkas, the chairwoman of the LCC. The slides were presented today by Christian Hernandez, who works for the City of Lowell and is also the LCC administrator. Our ASL interpreter today is Rachel Judelson. Our closed captioner is Sherry Majeski. And behind the scenes, we have Jane Long from BRM Production Management, keeping everything working. I still don't see, oh, here is a question in our Q&A. So this question's from Betsy. Regarding subjectivity in image descriptions, I could see how one might want to be as objective as possible when describing. Do you think that is best practice, or do you like the idea of subjectivity in descriptions?
I think that's a great question because you also have to think about, as you're typing in an alt text, are you representing your personal views or are you representing the organization's view? So I think as an organization, this is a conversation you need to have in terms of like, how much can you say about political conversation and protest? Your organization, especially if you are a state agency, you may have limitations on how much you can say. But so I think that it's good to have this conversation about subjectivity because I think the alt text and image description need to be impartial. but your post can say whatever you like. Your post, your tweet itself can be whatever you want. And I think so if you are saying that if you are expressing your emotion or your organization perspective, that is coming through clearly within the text, the post part. But the image description, I think, needs to be impartial. But I do want you to understand that even I could be impartial as possible, but you are still seeing what I see. So it's especially interesting because sometimes a man and a woman describe things very differently. So a woman might describe a picture of another woman in more details about what she's wearing, her makeup, her earring. A man just might describe the picture as a woman, almost as good as the auto-generated alt text. I hope that answered the question.
Thank you, Carrie. The next question comes in from Susan. Is it okay to put the image description and the same text in the alt text?
Yes, absolutely. So the alt text would just be that somebody who is using a screen reader will read that. I feel like it's more than fine to put alt text and image description to be the same thing. And sometimes it's actually easier. So if you were to copy and paste the image description, and then that means once you copy the image description, you can paste it into the option for the alt text. One thing I do want to point out that for Instagram, the only way you can add alt text and edit photos is doing it on your phone, as you may know in terms of editing photos in general, that you can't go to Instagram.com on your computer and try to edit it. So that's one of the reasons why I'm not just so keen on Instagram, because any editing I have to do on my phone. And because my phone keyboard is so much smaller, it's a bit tricky. But sometimes one way that I help myself when I can't really type very well on the keyboard is I will dictate to my phone. Like if you press the little microphone on your keyboard and you can type something that says, you can say into your microphone, a group of protesters, and then the dictation should pop up, and then you can have the option to correct it if it's not correct. Okay.
Thank you, Carrie. The next question comes in from Sam from the Open Door Theater. She asks, Carrie, are you teaching any of your dance classes on Zoom currently?
I'm not teaching it currently on Zoom. If you go to Silent Rhythm's Facebook page, there are a number of Facebook Live recordings. I am not teaching this myself at the moment because I really wanted to give an opportunity for all of the local dance teachers to have some income. And for me, because I have my other job, I'm not concerned about lost income. I am concerned with all the local dance teachers whose studios have closed and not able to have their dance classes, and they are severely worried about their livelihood and being able to afford the basics of rent and food. So I wanted to use the pandemic as an opportunity for me to help reach out to the local community and give them a chance for the dance teachers and the community to teach a class for silent rhythm. At the same time, I provide a sign language interpreter. So side by side, you see the sign language interpreter and you see the video of the dance teacher. This was also a way to give me incentive to dance teachers locally to think about accessibility. So they have motivation if I offer them a small stipend, and hopefully it's a lesson they learned that they think about broader for all of their other classes that's not part of Silent Rhythms.
And Sam has a follow-up question. She asks, do you recommend captions and alt text? I usually do both and or repeat my alt text descriptions in the comments to model good practices.
I'm assuming you mean caption on the website, like the caption at the bottom of a picture? If you do mean that, the caption is not the most important thing for an image on a website, because the caption is only for those who can clearly see. A screen reader does not read the caption on the website. Also, if you are talking about closed captioning for a video, screen readers do not read closed captioning. So in this Zoom meeting, we have closed captioning at the bottom. A screen reader cannot read that. And that is something that I will talk more about for the last session for the webinar, which will be on caption, and robots.
Thank you, Carrie. Our next question comes in from Lisa. Oh, I'll be able to answer this one. Will the slides from today's presentation be available to us? This was really helpful information. Thank you. Thank you so much, Lisa. We sent the slides in advance of the webinar to all registered participants. However, we will do the same again after the webinar for those that registered today. And we will also post a link to the presentation with this video when we upload it to our Facebook page. All right. And a question from Susan. I was creating a PDF worksheet for 4th grade students. It was a table of words. To make it more appealing, I put in a clip art image for each set of words. If I described the clip art in alt text, would it distract from the content and cause confusion of the words that were more important? What should I do? Thank you.
Excellent question. So PDFs also have the option for having alt text over the image, but there are ways to create accessible PDF. So when in a PDF, there is accessibility tool check. So use that as a way to check if your PDF is accessible. The images you use are not accessible unless you add in the alt text. My table is vibrating, they're telling me that time's up. So I can talk more about this during our very last session about captioning and more about alt text, or I'll add more to this for next week's webinar. I have to be mindful that we have different people who are supporting accessibility for this who will have to wrap up and leave soon. So that's why I do not want to go beyond time too much.
All right, well, Carrie, thank you so much. It is right at 11 o'clock, so we are going to wrap this up. If anyone has further questions for Carrie, you can reach her via the contact information on that ending slide. And also her email, I'll read out loud, is carrie@silentrhythmsboston.org. We will be emailing out a copy of the presentation to everyone registered, and then we will also post this video with a link to the presentation on the Lowell Cultural Council Facebook page. We hope to see you next Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time for the third in our Inclusion 101 series titled Accessible Virtual Spaces, Meetings, Conferences, and Dance Classes. With that, I'd like to wish everyone a very good weekend, and we will see you soon.